Hello and welcome to Who Are You Calling a Professional, hosted by Snack Time Media. I'm your host, Katie, and I can't wait to dive in with y'all today.
Hello and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So excited you're here. So to start today, we wanted to talk about your job, but we'll start with your name, your role or job title, and then what industry you're in.
My name is Sarah. I am a senior digital solutions developer, and I work at an environmental engineering consulting firm, and I work in the data engineering part.
So how did you first hear about this job or find this job?
So I majored in chemical engineering, and I concentrated in sustainability. So I always thought that if I were to stay in engineering, I would do more of the environmental side. And then I went into software consulting post-college, which was kind of a switch up from my major. But I did like the data side of things. And so after I left that job, I was looking for more of an intersection of engineering and data.
And when you were looking, were there a lot of jobs that you were considering, or were you kind of focused in the water industry, or what was your search like?
I knew I wanted to do engineering, so I was focused on sustainability. So whether it be water or transportation or environmental air standards or anything like that. So I actually ended up volunteering time to a woman who was big in the generative AI water section of engineering. And I just learned more about water engineering, and she recommended this company to me.
That's so awesome. So you did that volunteer while you had your other role?
Yes.
That's so impressive. I feel like managing that is honestly a lot, but impressive. Was there anything when you found this job that made you hesitant about taking it?
Probably the salary. And my previous job was completely remote, pretty flexible with where I worked and when I worked. And I think the engineering industry in general is just a little bit more strict when it comes to flexibility and where you work. But I am still lucky enough to be hybrid, so it is a little bit of a mix.
That's good. Definitely a mix-up, but I feel like not the worst. So getting into kind of what your job actually looks like, could you walk me through a specific day from start to finish, like an average work day for you?
Yeah, so I am still in consulting, so it usually is working with multiple clients at a time. But basically in the water utility space, a lot of those companies are really behind when it comes to data and automation. So kind of start to finish of a project, which I'm pretty much involved with at every step, is taking their data in whatever form that they have and suggesting any sort of digital solutions to make their life better. So whether that's automated reporting, building dashboards, or just teaching them about data engineering and how to store their data, so it's better use to them, is what it is. So it's a lot of hands-on work, so building processes, and then I'd say like 10% of the time is actually meeting with the clients and demoing the work that we do for them.
So when you started this job, did you already know about these tools, or how did you get ramped up to be able to have these conversations with a client?
I did not. I honestly learned everything on the job, which is kind of crazy. I was familiar with Excel before, and I guess knowing how to talk to clients in consulting was a good skill as well. I think that was valuable in where I started, but I primarily use Power BI, SQL or SQL, occasionally Python, but a lot of the Microsoft-based platforms, and now getting into actually Claude to build some of our automated processes. So I think just learning on the job, learning Power BI is really easy. So watching YouTube videos and things like that while working on projects.
That's impressive, honestly, to do that on the job. Was there any training that your company offered, or was it kind of just figured out?
It was kind of figured out. I would meet with a coworker who kind of acted as a lead to me, and he would give me hour demos of different tools and what he was working on, and then would just assign me small tasks to help him with. And that's where I got familiar with the softwares and the languages from there.
Then is there anything in your role that you've seen that's really rewarding, or where do you kind of find value in your job now?
I actually do think it is really rewarding. We work with small utilities that obviously serve a large population. And there are a lot of times where we show them what their data can do, and it helps them so much either save money so that they can use it in other areas or promote conservation efforts. And they're usually honestly just really grateful for what we do for them, and that itself is pretty rewarding.
And then are you part of the effort to find these clients, or is that kind of outside of your scope?
That's usually outside of my scope. I recently have gone on site to a client's office. In that way, we try to promote some of our work or some additional applications or products. So that's the only really way that I am involved in it.
And then in terms of a busy week, is it regular to have a really busy week, or does your job kind of ebb and flow?
I would say normally it's very much a standard 40 hours a week, which is really nice. With that, it does lack some flexibility sometimes. If you aren't necessarily as busy and technically could work 20 hours a week, you can't just leave the office and not work the rest of the 20 hours. You're going to be doing something in office. And recently I have been a little bit more busy, but I usually don't go over 45 hours a week.
It's a good balance. Definitely different than the previous consulting, I would say.
Yes.
So as you've transitioned and you work at a new role now, what is something that people think that your job is that is not at all true? Especially being in water.
Especially being in water, everyone just asks me about the drought in Colorado. They ask about data centers, if they can drink their water, which I'm less on the treatment side of things. I'm more on asset management. So if you ask me about a water plant, I could tell you a lot of things about that, but I don't necessarily know a lot about quality and some of those bigger issues.
Yeah, I definitely think you just know everything about water in any sense, so that's good.
Definitely do not.
As you did pivot your roles, was there anything that kind of surprised you about this role or the job that you took?
I think the engineering industry is just very different from software and tech. What surprised me is how behind our clients were with some technology. And then I'd say more internal. I know we've had some conversations about this, but just being a female in the industry is definitely looked at differently in engineering than it was when I was doing HR software implementations. Not necessarily in a bad way all the time, but I think you have to prove yourself before making progress in your career.
Was that hard for you?
Yeah, at first. But now I love when they respect me and it's like, ha.
I always knew I was good. Is there anything that while you're in this role you find particularly stressful or overwhelming?
Not necessarily. I've worked on a few applications where utilities are actually trading amounts of water, and the calculations and automations that we built physically control how they turn their valves. So I think that can be a bit stressful sometimes, because if those calculations are wrong, then something bad is going to happen. But normally it's very, very low stress, low stakes.
Is there anything about the job that's really hard that people don't really talk about or don't know about? I know we touched on some with just being a woman, but not sure if anything else comes to mind.
I think learning the new technology, because at this point I am very familiar in SQL and Power BI, but I mean, day by day, there's new software technologies coming out that clients are constantly asking about, even if they don't know how they could use it, that they're wanting us to look into before providing any sort of solution. So I say that's probably the hardest thing.
How much is AI kind of coming into play being in the software industry, like kind of adjacent industry?
I'd say a lot now. Public utilities are pretty neat just because they don't have a lot of sensitive data. A lot of it is public, so a lot of them are more willing to try different things, which is really cool for our team, because I actually just built an application this week in Claude Code and just gave it some of our clients' data and said, make a web application that can tell them all this, give them insights. And we would never sell that without doing some more testing and have some more data engineers looking at the back end, but it's pretty neat.
That's so cool. And I feel like it's nice that you have less data restrictions. I know that's been, for a lot of companies, just so hard to manage and what is really secure.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. When you were looking, were there any remote roles, or are most of the roles in person or hybrid at the minimum?
Anything engineering based is going to be hybrid or in person. I was interested in other data engineering roles, which definitely can be remote, but I think even those are starting to transition to in person.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's been a trend across a lot of roles lately. So you're kind of pivoting into the balance that you have here. I know you said typically 40, never really more than 45 hours a week, but once you're like clocking out, can you truly unplug, or do you find yourself still thinking about the job after you're done?
I definitely unplug. I think there's some big clients that cause a little bit more stress. I would say generally, and what I have noticed in this industry versus the last software implementation industry that I was in, is the clients are very much laid back compared to some others. So even hard deadlines don't seem as intimidating and not as stressful. So I think once I leave work, maybe I'll do some things on my laptop to get ahead for the next day, but I can usually leave it at the office.
Is there any expectation to be available at all hours or to be on late, work the weekends?
No. And I think since most of our clients are working at water utility plants, they leave at 5, so they're not going to be emailing you after 5 either.
That's nice. Are they mostly government or kind of a mix of government and private?
Usually private, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. And so I don't know if you've been a part of recruiting yet, but just in general, for someone who wants to apply to a role, what would separate someone from being successful versus plateauing or being not successful in this role?
I think knowing the basics, if I were to hire someone that would be helpful on my team, I would want to make sure that they know SQL. And I know there's so many more fancy languages now, and even just people being able to vibe code an app. But I think knowing the data engineering process in warehousing and like the basics of data analytics and engineering goes way farther than knowing multiple coding languages.
Is there anything that would kind of make someone then a bad fit other than just not knowing SQL, but like a personality trait or anything that wouldn't be a good fit for this role?
Yeah, I think if you're more focused on the end product and how much you can produce, which is, I think, a lot of people right now making different apps using AI, but not understanding and not wanting to understand the back end, because I mean, I'm learning all the time. I don't know a lot of things that I'm working on, but every time I do, I feel that I use it in another project in the future. So if you're not going to learn what's actually going on underneath, you're probably not going to be successful.
Oh, that's good. Is there any mistake that you've seen people make when they do enter this field or when they try to enter this field?
I think in consulting in general, just giving the same solution to every client. I think especially in data or something more technical, you always lean toward what you're comfortable with or just a technical solution. But I think it comes from talking to the clients where you actually make progress and have a successful project.
Yeah, that is true. Was there a moment since you've been in the role that you felt like this is really the right or the wrong job for you?
I think that I've had some moments where I've realized this is the right job for me, just because the circumstances outside of the actual work that I'm doing aren't always the most ideal compared to previous jobs as well. Just like relationships with coworkers or managers, the less flexible nature of the job. And with all of those factors considered, I still really love what I'm doing. And so I think that made me realize that this is something that I should stick with.
Yeah, I feel like that part's been obvious to see. Even when you're like, this is hard, you're so much more passionate about what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is good to see. So this might depend on different organizations, but in your organization, what does career progression look like?
We have a pretty standard promotion series within each job. So the compensation can be flexible, but we usually have you start as what would be considered like an assistant engineer, or in the case of a data role, more like a data analyst. And then you move up to senior principal, and then you start moving up to associate, senior associate, and vice president. So I think it is pretty linear in the fact that if you stay with the company long enough and stay progressing, then you're going to make it to that role eventually.
Is it a realistic expectation, or maybe it's like 2 years within each role? Is that kind of it, or is it 5 or more?
I think the minimum is 2. So
Okay.
You can't get promoted to the next level unless you've been in that role for 2 years. I'd say the higher up you go, it's probably more like 5 years in each role.
Yeah. It's nice to kind of have that outline. Sometimes I feel like it's nice to see what you could get if you stay at a place.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of old school, but I like it. So do you feel like in this role, I know we kind of mentioned salary, do you feel like you're paid fairly for the work that you're doing?
I would initially say no, because I do think I'm offering a lot of value to the company, but I do think the low stress nature of the job and the fact that I'm not usually ever working more than 45 hours does say a lot as well. So I think with all those things considered, I make a fine amount, but engineering is also known for paying less, a lot less than, say, a tech career.
Which is just so surprising because I feel like growing up and even in college, I just assumed that engineers make the most. So that's been a surprise post-grad.
They start off high and then just level out.
Since you've taken this job, do you feel like your lifestyle has changed at all?
I think I'm happier.
That's good.
I do think that I think when you like your job, obviously you enjoy things outside of work more, and adjusting to having a standard 40-hour work week was good and bad, but it is nice knowing that I can make definitive plans and plan weeks ahead, knowing that I'll be able to do activities after work and on the weekends.
Yeah, that's really nice. Seems like every job should have that, but I like that this job has that. In terms of being in this role, does this open doors for future jobs for you? Or what does that look like?
I think that specifically data in the engineering space is pretty niche. Although I will say that utilities are lacking so much of the data side of things. So within the industry, I think it opens a lot of doors, whether I would want to go to the utility side, so pretty much the client side, or go to another consulting agency. I think it would be pretty transferable. I think it'd be harder to exit the engineering industry as someone in data, just since it is such a different nature of work.
Is there a place or a common next step that people take if they leave this role, or do folks typically stay?
Folks typically stay, which I guess is a good sign.
Yeah.
I think most people at our company stay until they retire.
That is a good sign. Is there, I know we talked about kind of the progression up, so I guess the ceiling of this role would be that vice president, and then I guess you probably wouldn't know what that pay would be like, but definitely assuming it'd be higher than what you would make now?
Yes.
Okay. That's a safe assumption.
I would hope so.
In terms of the benefits that your company offers, does it meet your needs? Is that a gap, or what does it look like for company benefit policies?
I only have one other job to compare it to, and I honestly am not sure how it compares to others. I've heard that, at least in the engineering industry, the benefits are really good. I know the health insurance is really good. We offer really good retirement plans and matching. The maternity leave lacks a little bit, but it's improving.
It's so interesting. I feel like I've heard from other folks who have been in the industry for longer, and some companies are just getting their maternity policies up to date, and some are still so behind. And I think it makes sense in the male-dominated industry that it's a little behind.
Ours just went up again, though, so that's huge.
That is good. And kind of how we'll wrap up today is talking about how people could get into a job like yours. So if someone was interested in your job, what's the fastest path to really get them there?
That's a good question, I think, because I had an unconventional way of getting here, but I think that is very common for people who make it into data. I would say, again, just like learning those basics of data engineering and analytics, do some basic projects on your own. And then I think the biggest thing is just reaching out to people and going to different events that they put on is really valuable.
Are you reaching out like LinkedIn, or what have you seen be successful?
That's how I got my job.
Nice.
Was reaching out on LinkedIn, and I did have a connection. So I think reaching out without a connection is less desirable. But if you can find anybody that you know in the industry and somehow connect yourself, even if it's just connecting to a specific role rather than a person, I think that opens up the door more for someone to respond and be more willing to talk to you.
I love it. For your role, do you have to have an engineering degree to get the job?
You do not. It's a little different in the data side of things because most of the company is engineers. So as an assistant engineer, you do need that engineering degree from an accredited university. But data is kind of just wherever. As long as you have some sort of experience or desire, then you can make it in.
Is this a role that people get right out of college, or do you typically have to have some experience prior to starting it?
It can be either. So one of my coworkers on my team is right out of college. He actually interned with the company. So he came right from college. I was 3 years out of college, and I think there's a variety throughout the company.
And then we talked about SQL and Power BI, but are there any other skills or programs that people should focus on before applying to a role like this?
Honestly, not that I can think of. I think some sort of certifications with analytics would be helpful. They're so easy and there's so many free ones, but not just taking like free certifications without doing some work and having experience.
And then I know that we talked about how you do work with clients. How much of the role would be public speaking?
Not much, I would say. And it varies depending on what projects you're on. So some projects you will have to present to broader audiences, like possibly a city board or a council, but usually it is just to a small client team, and that's usually an hour to 2 hours of my day.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share about your job?
You should go into the water industry. It's always going to need people, and it's really different, and it's fun.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you'd like to be featured on a future episode, please go to snacktimemedia.net or reach out at whoareyoucallingaprofessional@snacktimemedia.net. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend or leave a review. Hope you have a great week. See you again next week. Bye, everyone.